The extraordinary story of Koko, the gorilla who spoke with her heart. In a world where we often draw lines between humans and animals, one remarkable gorilla challenged everything we thought we knew about communication, emotion, and the capacity for love across species. In today's video, we're exploring the extraordinary life of Koko, a Western lowland gorilla whose ability to communicate through sign language forever changed how we view animal intelligence and emotional depth. A special birth. On July 4th, 1971, at the San Francisco Zoo, a female gorilla was born who would eventually challenge the scientific community's understanding of animal cognition. Named Hanabi-ko, Japanese for fireworks child, due to her Independence Day birth, she would soon be known to the world simply as Koko. The circumstances of her birth were already unusual. Her mother, Jacqueline, was on loan to the San Francisco Zoo from the Cincinnati Zoo's successful gorilla breeding program. Koko was Jacqueline's third offspring, but unlike her siblings, Koko showed exceptional curiosity from her earliest days. Zookeepers noted how she would watch human visitors intently, following their movements and seemingly studying their interactions in a way that distinguished her from other infant gorillas. At just 1 year old, Koko began working with Dr. Francine Patterson, a psychology student at Stanford University, who initially planned a short-term project teaching sign language to gorillas. Patterson had been inspired by earlier attempts to teach chimpanzees to communicate, but she believed gorillas, with their calm demeanor and known intelligence, might be even better candidates for language acquisition. What began as a 4-year study evolved into a lifelong commitment that would span over 4 decades. The early years of discovery. Patterson's initial work with Koko was intended to test a simple hypothesis. Could a gorilla learn to use a human language? The scientific community was skeptical. Most researchers believed that language was uniquely human, requiring cognitive abilities that other primates simply did not possess. The early days of training were challenging. Patterson started with simple signs for objects in Koko's immediate environment: food, drink, more. Progress was slow at first, with Koko taking weeks to master her first signs. But Patterson noticed something remarkable. Once Koko understood that making specific hand movements could result in getting what she wanted, her learning accelerated dramatically. By the time Koko was 2 years old, she had mastered over 30 signs. By age 4, her vocabulary had expanded to nearly 250 signs. Critics dismissed these achievements, suggesting Koko was merely mimicking or responding to unconscious cues from her handlers. To address these concerns, Patterson implemented blind testing protocols where Koko would be asked questions by researchers who didn't know the correct answers, eliminating the possibility of subtle prompting. The results were undeniable. Koko consistently demonstrated true comprehension, even in these controlled conditions. What's more, she began to combine signs in novel ways, creating phrases she had never been taught directly. When she encountered a ring, an object she had never learned a sign for, she called it finger bracelet, combining 2 signs she already knew to describe something new. Learning to speak without words. What made Koko truly extraordinary was her mastery of American Sign Language. By the end of her life, she had learned to use over 1,000 signs and could understand approximately 2,000 words of spoken English. This wasn't mere mimicry. Koko demonstrated the ability to combine signs in novel ways to express new thoughts, showing a genuine understanding of language rather than simple conditioning. Her linguistic capabilities extended beyond concrete objects. Koko learned to express abstract concepts like good, bad, same, different, and even time-related concepts like yesterday and tomorrow. She understood questions and could respond appropriately, showing a grasp of syntax that many had thought impossible for non-human animals. Perhaps most remarkable was Koko's ability to express complex emotions. She signed about feeling happy, sad, and even angry in contextually appropriate situations. When she accidentally tore a favorite book, she signed sorry without prompting, showing not just emotional awareness, but also social understanding that would have been thought impossible for non-human animals. She also demonstrated a capacity for humor that shocked researchers. When asked what she would do if a researcher gave her something she didn't like, she signed bite wash, meaning she would bite them and then pretend to be innocent by washing her hands of the deed. She had essentially described the concept of deception, something that requires understanding that others have different knowledge than oneself. A cognitive ability called theory of mind that was once thought unique to humans. A home of her own. In 1974, a critical moment in Koko's development came when Patterson established the Gorilla Foundation, creating a permanent home for Koko away from the confined environment of the zoo. Located in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the foundation provided Koko with more space, enrichment, and a stable environment where her language learning could continue to flourish. This transition marked an important shift in Koko's life. No longer on display to the public, she could develop more naturally in an environment designed specifically for her needs. Patterson's approach evolved as well, moving beyond simple language acquisition to studying the depth and nuance of Koko's emotional and cognitive life. At the foundation, Koko's living quarters were designed to be as stimulating as possible. She had access to toys, picture books, and even TV and movies. Her favorites included Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and National Geographic specials about animals. She would sign comments about what she was watching, expressing preferences, and making connections between the screen and her own experiences. It was in this enriched environment that Koko began to express more complex desires and emotional needs, most notably her desire for companionship beyond humans. The kitten who stole her heart. In 1984, Koko made a simple request that would lead to one of the most touching animal relationships ever documented. She asked for a cat. For her birthday that year, Koko was allowed to select a kitten from a litter. She chose a gray male Manx and named him All Ball, reportedly because he looked like a little ball to her. The choice of name revealed something important about Koko's cognitive abilities. Unlike previous animal language studies where names were typically assigned by researchers, Koko created her own descriptive name based on her perception of the kitten's appearance. This demonstrated not just language use, but creative linguistic expression. Koko's relationship with All Ball revealed a depth of gentleness that astonished researchers. Despite the enormous size and strength difference, an adult gorilla can exert force sufficient to bend steel bars. She treated the tiny kitten with extraordinary tenderness, carrying him carefully like a baby gorilla, even attempting to nurse him. She would sign to him, play with him, and appear genuinely attached to her tiny companion. Their daily routine became a fascinating study in cross-species bonding. Koko would carry All Ball around the compound, showing him things and signing about them as if teaching the kitten. She would gently pet him with one finger, understanding intuitively the delicacy required. At night, she insisted that All Ball sleep with her, cradling the kitten protectively. Tragically, after only a few months, All Ball escaped from Koko's enclosure and was killed by a car. What happened next demonstrated Koko's emotional capacity and heartbreaking clarity. Grief across species. When Patterson informed Koko of All Ball's death, her reaction was unmistakable. Koko signed sad, sad, and cry, cry. Later, when asked about All Ball, she signed sleep cat, showing an understanding of death that many had believed was unique to humans. In the following days, researchers recorded Koko making the gorilla sound for crying, a high-pitched wail she had never used before. She was observed sitting alone, listless and withdrawn, showing classic signs of grief. This mourning process continued for weeks, with Koko periodically signing All Ball and looking at pictures of cats, then signing sad. The depth of Koko's grief challenged fundamental assumptions about animal emotions. If a gorilla could understand death and mourn a lost friend, what other emotional capacities might animals possess that we had failed to recognize? Patterson later arranged for Koko to adopt other cats, including a pair of kittens she named Lipstick and Smokey. While she formed bonds with these new companions, staff noted that she would sometimes sign All Ball when looking at pictures of her first kitten, suggesting she maintained distinct memories of her original pet even years later. The search for gorilla companionship. While Koko's relationships with humans and cats provided rich social connections, Patterson recognized that she needed companionship of her own species. In 1976, the Gorilla Foundation acquired Michael, a young male gorilla who had been captured in Cameroon after poachers killed his family. Michael, too, learned sign language, eventually mastering over 600 signs. The relationship between Koko and Michael became another remarkable chapter in the Foundation's work. They developed a complex social bond, communicating in sign language not just with humans, but with each other, the first documented case of two non-humans communicating through a human language. Their interactions revealed surprising depth and complexity. They would sometimes argue in sign language, with Koko once signing "stupid devil" to Michael after he disturbed her things. They also showed care for each other, sharing food and keeping each other company. When Michael died unexpectedly of heart failure in 2000, Koko's grief was profound, mirroring her reaction to Allball's death years earlier. Later, a male gorilla named Ndoom was brought to the Foundation as a potential mate for Koko. While they never produced offspring, they developed a companionable relationship that provided Koko with important social connection to her own species in her later years. A bridge between worlds. Throughout her life, Koko met with numerous celebrities, including Robin Williams and Mr. Rogers. These interactions were more than publicity stunts. They were opportunities to demonstrate Koko's extraordinary ability to connect with humans. When Robin Williams visited in 2001, Koko immediately recognized him from his films she had watched. She signed for him to tickle her and play with her, showing genuine joy in his presence. What struck Williams most was Koko's insistence that he show her his watch and then try on his glasses, demonstrating curiosity about human artifacts and playfulness that transcended species barriers. When Williams died in 2014, Koko was informed of his passing and was observed to become somber and quiet, signing "cry" when she heard the news. Her meeting with Mr. Rogers was equally remarkable. Rogers, known for his gentle demeanor with children, approached Koko with the same respectful quietness. She immediately recognized him from his show and did something unprecedented. She reached out and removed his shoes, just as Rogers did at the beginning of each episode of his program. This demonstrated not just recognition, but understanding of Rogers' familiar routine from television. Perhaps most telling was Koko's lifelong relationship with Patterson. Though critics sometimes questioned the scientific validity of their bond, what was undeniable was the genuine affection between them. Koko would often sign "Love, you visit Penny" when Patterson arrived, and appeared distressed when she left. On Patterson's birthday, Koko would sign "Happy" and participate enthusiastically in celebrations, seemingly understanding the significance of the day. Scientific impact and controversies. Koko's abilities sparked intense debate in the scientific community. Some researchers remained skeptical, suggesting that her apparent language use might be the result of cueing or overinterpretation by handlers who were emotionally invested in her success. Critics pointed to the difficulty of conducting fully controlled studies in the intimate environment required for language learning. Other scientists, however, saw in Koko compelling evidence that language, or at least proto-linguistic communication, was not uniquely human. Her case, along with studies of other signing apes and dolphins with symbolic communication systems, began to blur the once sharp line between human and animal cognitive capabilities. Beyond linguistics, Koko's demonstrated emotional complexity had profound implications for animal welfare and ethics. If great apes could experience grief, form deep attachments, and understand concepts like death, how should that inform our treatment of them in zoos, research facilities, and in the wild? The Gorilla Foundation's work with Koko helped fuel growing public concern about the conservation status of gorillas. As people connected emotionally with Koko through media coverage, they became more invested in protecting her wild counterparts, whose numbers were declining precipitously due to poaching and habitat loss. The legacy of understanding. On June 19, 2018, Koko passed away in her sleep at the age of 46. News of her death triggered an outpouring of grief from around the world. But beyond the sadness was a recognition of how profoundly this one gorilla had changed our understanding of animal consciousness. Koko taught us that the capacity for language, empathy, and emotional depth extends far beyond human beings. She made us question the arbitrary lines we draw between ourselves and other species, suggesting that the differences may be of degree rather than kind. Her legacy lives on in concrete ways. The Gorilla Foundation continues its work in interspecies communication research and gorilla conservation. The scientific papers, books, and documentaries about Koko form a treasure trove of data that continues to inform our understanding of primate cognition. Perhaps most importantly, Koko's life stands as a powerful reminder of our responsibility toward the creatures with whom we share this planet. If gorillas can feel love, joy, and grief as we do, what does that mean for how we treat them? Since Koko's passing, western lowland gorillas remain critically endangered, with fewer than 100,000 left in the wild. Their numbers continue to decline due to poaching, disease, and habitat destruction. Koko, who never experienced the forests of her ancestors, nonetheless became an ambassador for her species, putting a face and a name, quite literally a voice through her signs, to the abstract concept of conservation. A final message. In one of her most famous interactions, Koko was asked what message she wanted to share with people. She signed, "People, Gorilla, Love, Earth." In just 4 signs, this extraordinary gorilla captured what might be the most important lesson of her remarkable life: that across the seeming divide between species, there exists the possibility for genuine connection, understanding, and love. As we continue to learn more about animal intelligence and emotion, Koko's story reminds us to approach the natural world not with assumptions of our superiority, but with humility and openness to the complex inner lives of the beings with whom we share our planet. In a very real sense, Koko used her hands to speak directly to our hearts. And in doing so, she didn't just communicate, she transformed how we see ourselves in relation to the vast tapestry of conscious life that surrounds us. Her story isn't just about what one gorilla could learn, but about what one gorilla could teach, if only we would listen.